I'm going to introduce you to glazing your pottery now that you have made some projects. So once I have fired your pieces once in what's called the bisque firing, they are going to be white and hard, but kind of dull, and they're not completely finished yet. We're going to paint a layer of glaze on top, and I'm going to fire it another time, and then they end up having a nice shiny coat that you can eat or drink off of or wash, and they will be a whole variety of different colors depending on how you paint them. So your different projects will start being white, and you will paint on glaze colors with paintbrushes, and they seem like paints, but they're actually not. They are a combination of silica and some different oxides and minerals that when you heat up enough turn to glass, like a layer of glass over top your piece. And one thing you'll notice is that in their glazy state, they're very chalky, kind of like a consistency of milk or cream, and they don't look anything like the color they're going to be. Some of them look a little bit like the color, but some look very different. This one, for instance, you'll see is sort of a grayish color right now, but after it's been fired, it turns into this ultramarine blue. So it changes quite a bit once you fire it. So that's why with your glaze colors, it will say on them, either on the label or written on the caps, what color they're going to be. And there will be samples, probably a printout, a piece of paper with a sample color of what to expect when that piece has been fired with that glaze. So a few things you want to do to get started is cover your work area with a piece of paper and take whatever color you're going to work with that day for that piece and shake it. Make sure the cap's on tight. Shake it so it's all mixed up. Then once you take your cap off, you'll have the glaze ready to use. Now this is a piece that has pink and red dots glazed on there, but it has not been fired yet. And these are pieces where we've mixed different colors for different details, and the inside is a brown. So you can choose several colors to put together. And you'll notice that you still see all of your imprint details, even under the glaze. So don't be worried about going over some of your textures and designs, because the glaze will go into all those little crevices and you'll still see all your patterns afterwards, even if you don't see them very well while you're glazing. You can leave parts of the clay unglazed, and they will just be kind of a tan, not shiny area, where the other areas will be whatever color you choose and shiny. So once you're ready, pick kind of the size brush that will work for your piece, and then keep that brush with that color. So you'll have several brushes and several color glazes. It's very important that you don't mix the glaze colors together. So if you're using red with this brush, you do not want to then stop and put it into a different color, put it into your blue, because that will contaminate the glazes. So I like to have one brush for red, one brush for blue, and now mix them up. And if you do need to change brush colors, wash that brush very well so there's no more glaze left. So I'm just painting this on like you would a normal paint. And then once you do one coat, You want to let it dry for a minute, and you'll go back and you'll do a second coat so you get a very nice rich solid color. If you just do one coat, it still will be a color, you'll still see the color and the shininess, but it will be a little more translucent, like the tongue on this guy is pink, but it's a very light sort of translucent pink. If we had done a second layer on that, it might have been more of a solid full color. So this is drying, and as soon as it just looks kind of dull and chalky, you can go over it and give it a second layer. Now you'll notice that I'm being very careful not to put any glaze on the bottom of my piece. And that's on purpose, because if you were to glaze the bottom of your piece and then put it in the kiln, on the kiln shelf, and fire it, and the glaze will turn to glass, your piece will stick to the kiln shelf. It'll be there permanently, and we'll have to chip it off with a chisel and break it. So you don't want any glaze on the bottom. If you accidentally get a little bit on there that you didn't mean to, just get a wet sponge and it'll come off. So we want a nice clean bottom for a finished piece so that can sit safely on the kiln shelf. Now at this point I might switch to a different color for the inside of my bowl and a different brush. This is the dark blue. This one's not quite as thick as the red, but it'll still work, especially because we're going to give it a couple different coats. So once you get a nice solid coat, let it dry for a moment. I'm going to get the lip of that bowl too. If you're making bowls and cups and plates that you want to use in the kitchen, it's important to try to get all the little spots of clay painted and covered so it'll be easy to wash and clean and use. Those are the basics with glazing. It's not very hard, other than remembering to stir it up. Don't mix the colors and don't paint the bottom. And use your samples to understand what color it's going to be when it's fired, because it'll look very different once it's all fired up. We'll have a range of choices of color, some blues and greens, red, orange, yellow, brown, black and white, a purple, lavender kind of pink. So there'll be all sorts of colors that you can choose to paint all the different details on your pieces. And then you'll bring them back to me and I'll fire them again, and then you'll end up with your finished glazed piece ready to display or use in the kitchen.